My guest today has been in the C-suite of a few conglomerates, which we'll discuss. Today, he coaches executives on management in addition to teaching it at Columbia University. His name's Willie Pietersen. He's the author and the originator of strategic learning, a concept that I find very intriguing and we're going to be exploring because he could have named his book Strategic Management, but he used the word learning, and that's going to be one of my questions that I want to delve into. So please say hello to Willie Pietersen. Thank you.
Pleasure to be with you, Diane.
So Willie, I have to start with one thing.
Yeah.
Okay. You on your website have a video that I watched and enjoyed, and you say, never retire. Now, I'm a big believer of that, but I would like to know what your thoughts are about that.
Yeah, I need to explain that idea. I have a mantra now consisting of three things.
Mm-hmm.
Never retire, never stop learning, and lead life at a reasonable pace. And if you can't do the third one, you can't do the first two. So I need to explain what I mean by retire. It doesn't mean that you continue doing what you're doing now forever.
Mm-hmm.
We age, our energy goes down. We need to reinvent ourselves and do something different with our lives.
Mm-hmm.
I believe, right throughout life, we're either contributors or extractors, one way or another. And I think we can always find good ways of contributing.
Mm-hmm.
So I start off as a lawyer, as an example, ultimately into the corporate world, lucky enough to have an international career, a wonderful learning laboratory, working and leading in different countries throughout the world, learning from different cultures, etc. After having done that for 20 years, the company I was running was a subsidiary of Kodak and it was sold.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, well, I'm going to find another CEO job. And I had a lunch with a good friend. And I said, well, I'm just looking for my next CEO role. And he said, why on earth would you want to do that? You've done it for 20 years. Isn't that enough already? Why don't you do something different with your life? You've always we talked about the pleasure of learning and teaching. And suddenly that spark came on, and I then connected with Columbia Business School, and I'm now in my third career. And on this basis of
So law, CEO, educator.
And educator.
Wow.
That's been just, from my vantage point as leading a productive, rich life, I couldn't have wished for better.
And we could actually add a fourth, because don't you also consult with companies now?
I do.
Yeah, because that's really another business more than just to educate, not just, I hate the word no, just, more than educating at Columbia. I'm sure there are plenty of CEOs that would love to collaborate because it's lonely at the top. And, it is. And speak with someone who's been there and done that and had some of the different challenges that arise in everyday business.
And I enjoy that because it keeps me in touch with the real world.
Yeah.
I mean, we can get a bit isolated in academia and dwell in the realm of theory. Now, I really respect theory much more than I did as a practitioner.
Uh-huh.
Because theory at the end of the day tells us what works, what doesn't, and why. But I'm a pragmatist at heart. So the test of a good theory is its usefulness in practice.
Yeah.
And I'm constantly testing out these ideas in practice with the consulting work I do.
I think that's so important because I always look at sports teams. And if I was watching a hockey game with my husband, the first thing I say about it, I'll be watching and I'll say, did that coach ever play hockey?
Right.
Or it could be anything.
Yes.
I want to know, did the person actually play?
Yeah.
I appreciate the theory, but I think there needs that cross between theory and practice is very different.
It is. There's an intersection there.
Yeah.
And it matters.
Those are the people I want to listen to the most, which is why I'm enjoying this second time with you. We're in our second round.
Well, I'll tell you something, Diane. When I first started teaching at Columbia, the dean introduced me to some of the faculty members, and said, they'll teach you the rules of the road here. That's fine. And one of them leaned forward. He was a guy in marketing, a guy called Mac Hulbert. He leaned forward and he said, I want to tell you something, but I hope you'll bear in mind. I said, oh, sure. I'm looking forward to good advice. And he said, 80% of the people from the corporate world who come in here and try and teach fail. I said, oh, wow. I said, Mac, tell me about the other 20%.
Why did they succeed?
Yeah, what does it take to succeed here? And one of the first...
That's a great comeback.
That's what it occurred to me. I mean, how do I learn to do it well? Don't just scare me.
Right.
And one of my earlier realizations...
That's a really good comeback.
It's very tempting when you're teaching to talk about the examples from your own experience. Mm-hmm. And you're living in your own bubble as if that's the whole universe of learning. So what I've learned to do is validate my ideas with reference to the evidence outside of my own experience, because that's what I owe the students I teach. Mm-hmm. I don't like the word teach. I prefer the word learn, because that's what we're doing. We're helping each other think clearly, and I'm a great believer in Socrates' method, learning through asking questions, through dialogues, through explorations together. And I always say, give me permission to tell you what I think. Your job, decide what you think. And the rule of the road is hard on issues and soft on people. And that way we really tackle the key issues. So I've wandered around a bit in terms of your question of never retire, but it does mean a shift of gear to contribute something. I had a good friend called Al Stern, who was a big corporate CEO, major organization, and he reached retirement age. We were on a board together in a not-for-profit, and Al was intrigued about teaching, but he just didn't feel that he was well cut out for that kind of role, and he kept searching for something to do, and he found a terrific thing to do. There are a lot of underprivileged schools in Manhattan that are struggling. And he began to be a coach to the principals of these schools in terms, because, to teach is to lead, help people lead a productive life, to cope with life, everyday life, to have enough information and knowledge to be able to have a productive career. He did that 4 mornings a week. And it's just another example. No pay, he had enough money, that wasn't the issue, but he kept contributing. That's what I mean by never retire. Einstein said, life is like riding a bicycle. You either move forward or you fall off. I believe that's true.
You also said before something that I would imagine a lot of people, particularly executives and boards, would find very valuable as far as your expertise, because you mentioned that you have to be learning when you're learning together with your students or in a situation that let's say it's a crisis. It's something new. It has never happened before.
Right.
And I know, like when I've advised companies, the amount of people that you're sitting with that are trying to tie it to something that happened 2 years ago that feels similar, but it's not. It's a whole different time period, different cast of characters, different situations. But people look for that familiarity, which I guess is part of the education process, but the practical process, you really have to get into the present.
Yeah, well, Alvin Toffler said it well. Our task
What did he say?
Well, he said, our real challenge is to learn, unlearn, and relearn.
Oh.
And as the environment shifts and changes the rules of success, if we can't unlearn past thoughts, practices that no longer work, we're going to get into trouble. A very strong magnet is the status quo bias. We cling to what we know, to what's familiar. We feel mastery over that. We don't want to let it go. It's a sense of loss when we do that. And here's an interesting question that I often ask organizations. If their financial results have been good in the prior year, the question is, what percentage of those results came from decisions you took last year? And what from people, predecessors, in prior years? Now, just anecdotally, I've done it about 30 or 40 times. The average is about 30% of results today come from current decisions. 70% come from past decisions. And what are we really doing if we think about that? We're surfing on momentum, and it feels good. And it leads us to say, well, it's working. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. But we're not really creating the future. We're being pushed by the past, surfing on momentum. So this issue of understanding the external environment and how those are changing the rules of success becomes the key thing in this learning and unlearning.
And the external environment shifting more faster with technology and social media and activist investors and
Absolutely.
Social activists. All these things are impacting leadership more than ever.
Absolutely so. I was asked recently, I happen to be a Rhodes Scholar, and I was asked to give a talk
That's
to
impressive.
Rhodes Scholars in residence in Oxford. And I was preparing this, and of course, they're in residence, they're much younger than I am. And I was thinking about this issue of they're facing change at a colossal scale. And I thought back, well, let me just think back on how my parents dealt with the changes around them. My mother was born in 1902. I did a bit of research. Here were the new things that were emerging. Automobiles, aviation. The telephone had been invented in 1876. Still were party lines. And you didn't have a number.
I remember that.
So there was that one. Radio, which was called in South Africa, where I grew up, was called the wireless, which is much more descriptive. And all of these things were new. In the small town where my parents were born, civil aviation was just not known. First World War, they had fighter planes, but nobody was traveling by air. Automobiles were very rare. I remember my father walking me around the house he used to live in the small town. And he said, I want to show you something. He said, you see that telephone line? He said, it's a very thin wire. When we speak to Aunt Betty at the other end of town, our voice is carried through that thin wire. Isn't that miraculous? Then he said, and an hour ago I listened to the BBC News on our wireless. And the BBC News was carried across the ocean 6,000 miles away, through the storms, over the mountains, and into this little box of ours without wires. Isn't that miraculous? Now, anybody born in that period of time with all of those factors coming into play would look at that and have a conversation like this and say, isn't the world changing in a radical way? So there's always been change, but you put your finger on it.
Yeah.
What's happened now is the change is happening faster. Now, here's a frightening statistic. If you think about our responsibility as corporate executives, the biggest one is to keep the sustainability of our organization, to keep it going, to give it a good lifespan. If you look at the history on the S&P 500, this is a McKinsey study. In 1958, the average lifespan of organizations was 61 years. At that stage, just a few years less than the human lifespan in the mid-19th.
Very interesting.
Today, it's 18.
Oh, my God. Is that because of acquisitions and mergers or
part
failing?
That is part of it. That's a very good question. It's not just bankruptcies. But you do get examples of bankruptcies.
Because there's so many. I mean, you look at the LVMH Corp chart and you see, I mean, I don't even know how many companies are in that within their ownership.
Yes, exactly. So those companies as separate entities are disappearing because they're being combined into a conglomerate of some kind. But other companies like GE are, spinning out.
Are splitting out, yeah.
So I don't know how the one offsets the other, but I'm
But it's
certainly
still a
aware.
fascinating number, 18 versus 61.
So if you say
Wow.
it's measuring the same kind of things, in other words, measurement to be useful has to be consistent.
Do you think some of that also might have to do with so many of the newer companies today are tech-based
That's also
and, coming out of Silicon, Valley or Silicon Alley, whichever, but it's younger CEOs that just, you can be a young CEO with an idea. Doesn't mean you're the person to ultimately lead the company into the next level. And,
Yes.
Sometimes you have to abdicate that throne because it's just a different world.
That's exactly right. But, let's take a dramatic example.
Mm-hmm.
Kodak. Now,
I think about that a lot.
It's an amazing company. The subsidiary that I was running was a subsidiary of Kodak.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason they sold that business, it was Sterling Winthrop's health business, pharmaceutical business, is that the mothership was sinking and they needed the money, right? Now, Kodak went insolvent. And it had been the fifth most valuable company in the world.
Yeah.
It had 85% of the camera market and 90% of the film market. It was gushing cash. Now, it went insolvent. And you say, well, why did it go insolvent? Well, it was overtaken by digital photography.
Mm-hmm.
Who invented digital photography? Kodak did. They were defeated by their own technology. Now, this is back to the status quo bias.
Mm-hmm.
A guy called Mike Sasson,
Mm-hmm.
who was a development engineer at Kodak, actually invented digital photography. And he was very excited about it, presented it to the leadership team. And they were obviously afraid of this new technology, kept asking him questions. The resolution is not as good as film. He said, 6 months, I'll solve that. That's not an issue. This is just the first version, but it's the future. And they said, but if we introduce this, it will cannibalize our entire film and camera business. And he said, yes, it will, but if we don't do it, somebody else will.
Yeah.
You know what their reply was? No, Mike, not if we don't tell them.
Oh.
Now, he gave an interview to the New York Times, so I'm able to quote Mike Sasson.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the meeting, as they wrapped up, the head of the meeting, the senior leadership team, said, Mike, that's a cute idea, but don't tell anybody. He didn't tell anybody, and they went broke.
That is so fascinating to me because whether it's in the music business or especially publishing books, somebody will say to me, I now no longer look at what anybody's writing unless they will sign something that says, I understand ideas are in the universe. And I make them sign that when they'll say, could you just look at my book and tell me if you think it's going in? No. Not unless you acknowledge ideas are in the universe because you think this is a unique idea, but somewhere it's floating around.
Yeah, sure.
And other people think it's a good idea too. Yeah. You're not the one person in the 8 billion that think sometimes that happens.
Right.
And sometimes multiple people have the same idea, but not all have the wherewithal or the fortitude or the stamina to push it forward. But doesn't change the fact that the idea might be in other people's minds too.
Exactly right.
Yeah, that is a heck of a story.
Yes, it is. It's amazing. It's shocking.
Yeah. And it reminds me too, one day I met about 20 years ago, former president of Bird's Eye Foods.
Oh, yeah.
And I said, whatever happened to your brand? Where did it go? I haven't seen it in years. And he goes, when was the last time you made a pie? And I looked at him and I said, oh, I make cakes. I make cookies. I haven't made a pie. My mother makes really good pies, though. And he goes, that's the problem. He goes, we were pie crusts. We were pie fillings. He goes, and we just never adapted, thinking pies weren't going anywhere.
Right, exactly. And the interesting thing, Diane, is that in retrospect, all these things seem obvious.
Yeah. In retrospect.
Aren't
we all geniuses in retrospect?
There was a time where there were no cup holders in cars. You couldn't buy, if you went to a dealer and said, I want a car with cup holders.
Hey, I was just hoping for air conditioning and other than wing windows in my Volkswagen.
Exactly. So we got a nutcase in here. And then when it was Honda, I think, the first company that introduced cars, cup holders, their market share went up because there were cup holders. Now, if you try and buy a car without cup holders, they think you're nuts. Right? The same thing as wheels on suitcases.
Yeah.
At one time,
Funny
there
one.
were not wheels on
Right.
suitcases. But somebody thought of it. Now it's obvious.
And you wouldn't want to buy one without it. You'd say, how am I going to lug that thing?
Yeah, if you go into a luggage store and say, I want a nice big suitcase without wheels, please.
You know, I was talking one time to somebody who had tons of patents.
Yeah.
And I said, how do you keep thinking of this? He said, I take something everyone uses every day and say, how could it be slightly bettered?
Yeah.
Which your examples show. He said, so, if it's a pair of glasses, what if I create a string, to make them so people won't lose them, or make them foldable so they fit in the pocket more? But he said, take something everybody uses every day.
There you go.
And work from basics.
Right.
He goes, and then you'll have your first patent.
Yeah, no, that's a great
Good
way to do it.
idea.
It's practical. You have to think about people's everyday needs and habits, the things that bug them. How can I solve that problem? How can I solve this problem? So I remember actually about the cup holders because I was running a Lever Brothers foods business.
Mm-hmm.
And there's an industry magazine, and I opened it and read it, and it said, and I can't remember the exact number. I'd just been in the U.S. for about 6 months at that time. And it said something like 18 to 20% of all calories consumed in the U.S. are consumed in cars.
Oh, my gosh.
Well, I've come to an interesting place. And I looked at that and said, well, I hope they're eating our food when they do that. They toss the magazine away. The car manufacturers saw the same statistic. And they could have, people driving to work with Coke or a coffee and sort of, where do you put it? Spilling it and kind of. So car companies reading that surely you would have thought, would say, I think maybe we can provide a solution to this, a place to put these things, right? And again, in retrospect, a lot of time people didn't think about that.
That's fascinating. You said two things that I want to make sure we cover.
Yeah.
One was you have three things that I want you to repeat your three because I want to focus in on number 3 a minute.
Okay, sure. Never retire. Reinvent yourself. Do something different. Never stop learning. Now, this is absolutely key. If you don't learn, you can't teach. And you can't lead yourself.
And then there was one
and
about
the third
movement.
one is lead life at a reasonable pace.
At a reasonable pace. Now that I want to explore because that we don't want to burn out. We want to be there for the long haul. So the concept of leading life at a reasonable pace is very intriguing to me.
Tell you where I got the idea from. I stole it.
You did.
But it absolutely resonated with me. Eisenhower's granddaughter wrote a biography of Eisenhower. And, of course, he was the Allied commander in the Second World War, made these incredibly important decisions, showed immense character, resolve, strategic acumen, and came back. He was then president of Columbia University. Mm-hmm. And then he became president of the United States, I think for 2 terms, if I'm not wrong.
Eisenhower was president of Columbia University?
Yes, he was. He was president of Columbia.
Dwight D. Eisenhower?
Yes, Dwight.
The general?
The general.
Really?
Yes, he was.
Wow.
That's what qualified him to become president of the U.S.
The general part or the Columbia?
Both of them, I think.
Wow.
And
I never knew that.
After that, somebody said to him, so, Ike, what do you plan to do next? And he said, lead life at a reasonable pace. And I thought, wow, that captures it for me, because implicitly I'd been trying to do that. You can't keep the same level of energy as you grow older. Mm-hmm. And if you try and spend more than your reserves allow, you get into trouble, and the people you serve get into trouble. You can't really do a job for them. That's the important part. And the enjoyment of life goes down. So re-engineering your activities to match your energy level becomes a critical thing to do. I tell you what's hard about it, saying no.
Mm.
It's, with people you've worked with for many years, call you up in the middle of a very busy period. We're going through a crisis. We've been working with you for 10 years. We use your process. Can you come down to wherever, San Antonio, whatever it is, in the next couple of weeks and run a 3-day workshop? Help us think through our problems and the future. And you look at your calendar and you could squeeze it in, but you would really, really be pushing it.
Mm-hmm.
And you find yourself then saying, I'd love to help you, but I don't think I can. I won't have the energy to do it well if I try and squeeze this into, a very busy period. That can be alienating. Mm-hmm. And you might be, if you want more and more consulting business, that company might say, no, I'm going to rather go to a McKinsey or a BCG. They've got plenty of staff. They can always send somebody.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to take your losses with it. And so you have to let go of certain things that you'd been doing before. That's not easy to do. I found I'm not really good at it. But when you fall short, you have to know what you've fallen short of.
Mm-hmm.
And so every now and again when I feel short of that and I wake up one day and I'm tired and I have to teach and I don't have that spark of enthusiasm, I say, okay, you've been doing too much. Slow down. It's hard to manage.
It is hard to manage. It's hard to say no. It's easier to say yes and then regret it.
Yes, exactly.
But, what I always got a kick out of the word no is when I hear someone say no, the biggest thing I know is I'm dealing with a decision maker. And I appreciate that because there are a lot of people who say yes, 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 but you can't close them. You can't get them to the point where they actually show up or do what they're supposed to do. So when someone says no, it's like, okay, I heard you.
Yeah.
Is there a way we can get to yes? Could you do this in 2 weeks? Could you do it in a month? Because I don't think the problem's going away. The urgent part, maybe we can get someone else for it, but maybe we can look at you, because we want to make sure we have a plan when this comes up in the future.
That's right.
So I like no's.
Offer an alternative if you can.
Yeah.
In the particular case I'm thinking of now, won't mention names, I actually said to the CEO, look, let's carve out an afternoon and do an online. Mm-hmm. The two of us, talk through your issues, think about the navigating forward, and then let's repeat that in a week's time to see how you've been doing. Mm-hmm. He said, gee, that would be useful.
Yeah.
So we did it like that. And that seemed to work, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Now, Strategic Learning is the title of your new book. And how do you define what a strategic learning is?
Okay. Well, it's first of all, it's my prior book.
Oh, it's your prior one.
My new one is called Leadership: The Inside Story. Okay. Nevertheless, just to put it in perspective.
No. Chris, there will be links to both of Willie Pietersen's books and anything else he does below this podcast.
Strategic learning. Let's. It's a means to an end, mm-hmm. and it was inspired by an idea. I just mentioned to you earlier on about corporate lifespans declining mm-hmm. in the face of continuous change. What's the job of strategy? That's where we start. What must it do for us? If it doesn't do anything useful, leave it alone. What must it do for us? Mm-hmm. Essentially, the role of strategy is to enable an organization to develop and sustain competitive advantage in a competitive environment, right? A margin of difference in the value that you provide that gives customers a compelling reason to choose you. Mm-hmm. It's about differentiation and then maintaining that in a dynamic environment. My humble opinion is that companies have generally been doing a poor job at that. The evidence back to lifespan from 61 years to 18, something is happening here, it's not working. And the old static methods of doing strategy, which is still alive and kicking, are no longer fit for purpose. Mm-hmm. Here's the interesting parallel. Strategy is actually a military concept. It was born in the military. It was not born in the corporate world. There's a Greek word, it comes from strategia, means generalship, to lead the army. That's what that word means. And the military have developed this concept of strategy throughout the ages and the give and take of warfare. And the whole underlying idea is everything in a competitive world is comparative. Everything is comparative. And you either compare favorably and you prevail, or you compare unfavorably and you become defeated. They also have a very active learning system in the military. I've done a number of workshops at the Army War College, learning from them. That's where I first met Reuben Mark. I invited him to one of those workshops. And it's incredibly instructive to work with them and understand it in the way they do it. It is a very dynamic process.
Can I interrupt you a second? Because you triggered something and I really want your opinion on this.
Sure.
You said companies are lasting, 18 years on average now versus 61 years. And you said it's based on comparison. And, either you're doing it the right way kind of thing and you're getting favorable or not. And right now we're living in a society where no one wants to be compared. Everyone's like, I'm unique. Do you think that's impacting how people are leading? Are you running across this with students at Columbia, for example? Not to call out students at Columbia, but just in general teaching, or when you go into a corporate structure and you hear, well, I've got this individual idea, and you mentioned Army. One of my favorite campaigns was their Army of One, as in the collective one, it's not all about you, soldier. It's about all us as one.
Correct. Unity of action.
So I'm curious, and I don't like to interrupt you because you have so many good things to say, but I really want to know what your thoughts are there.
Well, there's the personal level. And at a personal level, we social animals, I think those who prevail in life and succeed in life are those with the best interpersonal skills. I think there are two things for success: competence and character. Now, competence matters. You've got to know your job, know your skill. If you're a surgeon, you've got to know how to do it. That is never on its own enough. In very unusual circumstances, it might be if you're a particular genius and you do something nobody else is capable of. But generally speaking, I think the most important question in making appointments in a corporate world is not about competence. If you get a recruiter to bring you the top 5 candidates, having done their homework, you've got 5 competent people in front of you. Otherwise, you fire the headhunter. What are you exploring for now? It's character. It's the ability to work with others. And for me, the most important decisions I made as a CEO were about hiring the right people, firing the wrong people, but in a way that was productive for their lives. That's one. And the second very difficult area of decision-making for me was our annual, had an annual budget for making charitable contributions. Parade of people comes through my office every year. They're all worthwhile. Choose. Now you've got 2 models. You can spread, the benefits very, very thinly and everybody gets something. That makes no real difference to them. Or you can choose and focus and say, healthcare and education, that's what I'm going to focus on. Those were hard decisions. If you step back and think about it, they're all about people. Leadership is about people. Management is about things. And I think we need to bear that in mind.
That's a very interesting differentiation. Leadership is about people.
Yes.
Management is about things.
Yes.
Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, management is about getting jobs done, having the right processes for safety, quality control, succession planning, et cetera, et cetera. It's about systems and getting work done through processes. Leadership is about inspiring others to do their best work. Now, Peter Drucker said it well. The purpose of a leader is to get ordinary people to do extraordinary things. Now, isn't that? It's a short sentence.
But it says so. It packs a punch.
There it is. It says everything. And if you really can't do that, you can get the most skilled people in the world. And if they work at a level of low inspiration and low engagement, you're going to get very mediocre results.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned sports teams earlier on.
Mm-hmm.
It's exactly the same. The sports teams who really, really succeed at the end of the day are the most collaborative ones.
Mm-hmm.
They help each other succeed. If you play for yourself, you play your own game, not to the sort of the game plan for the team, that's not going to be a winning team. So it might sound very kind of down to earth and ordinary statement, but that's essentially what it's about. Leadership is not about power. It's about service. Mm-hmm. I think we need to bear that in mind. So at a personal level, I think those things are important. Now let's talk about the corporate level.
Mm-hmm.
What does a corporation have to do for its shareholders, for the welfare of its employees, for its various other stakeholders? It really has to, if we're in the free enterprise system, it has to compete effectively. And you always have competitors of one kind or another, either direct competitors or indirect competitors. And it's about differentiation and saying, I have a margin of difference in the value that I'm going to offer my customers. That's the thing that's comparative. That gives them a compelling reason to choose my service or my product. If you think about it, we all do shopping, right? We all buy stuff. We talk about customers as they. It's us. Mm-hmm. We all have the same mentality. We choose everything with reference to the alternatives available to us. Mm-hmm. And that's what I mean by it's comparative. All our decisions are comparative. You're wearing a very nice jacket. You compared it with alternatives. Mm-hmm. You might have looked at it and just instinctively said, that's me. But underneath that all, you're saying compared with this and compared with that. So that's what I mean by it's comparative. I don't mean competition at a personal level. Mm-hmm. At a personal level, it's all about collaboration to create a strong team able to compete in the external environment with great effectiveness. So those are the distinctions I would make.
As a professor at Columbia, top business school, teaching management, you hear in the news a lot now, which we can, whatever we can say for the news these days. You believe certain things, you don't believe certain things. But there's a lot of talk about capitalism and the good, the bad, the ugly. Do you get that in the classroom? And
occasionally, we get quite a few people from the not-for-profit.
I mean, because I'm a capitalist and I'm pro-capitalism personally, so I'll just start with that.
Yeah, sure. Same with me. Mm-hmm. There's so many things that are interconnected. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like an ecosystem that one builds. If you don't have a vibrant democracy, capitalism dies. Mm-hmm. So those two things for me
are essential.
Connected. The other thought I would just offer here is that any virtue taken to an extreme becomes a vice. And that I'm just purely quoting Aristotle here.
Yeah.
It's
a great one.
Yeah, it's a really important thing. So when capitalism becomes predatory, then I think it is socially disruptive. Mm-hmm. So there's another kind of connection there. One of the things that comes up.
What would be an example of predatory capitalism? So that's an interesting concept.
Driven by selfish personal motives, trying to destroy your competitors as opposed to competing in a fair manner.
Yeah.
Bending the rules to try and destroy them. If they're trying to make an acquisition, mounting a campaign against all the odds to say, no, it's going to be, monopolistic, etc. And if it becomes vicious in that kind of way, I don't mean to say it needs to be cozy.
No, I understand. There's a difference between not cozy, but definitely not vicious.
Yeah, definitely not
gotcha.
that. And then I'm constantly alerted to this growing discrepancy, widening gap between a CEO's pay and normal employees. It's grown by multiples, much more so in the U.S. than in other countries. I think that's worrisome. You know, I tell you what, Kurt Vonnegut, the author, was talking to a friend. And the friend said to him, you know, our mutual friend, Fred, I'll call him, he's succeeded brilliantly well. He's got all this money now. He's got a huge art collection. He's got a yacht. He's got his own private plane. All that's what he's living the life of Riley. And Vonnegut said to him, that's interesting, but I have what he will never have. And what is that? Enough.
That is priceless.
Yeah.
I've never heard that story, but I want to ask you, how has your description, your perception, your belief about what makes someone successful or how you feel successful changed over the years?
Wow, that's a really good one because it's a growth path. About 3 months after I had my first CEO job within the Unilever Group, I was young. I was told at the time, you're the youngest ever to have a role as senior. You know, now people are becoming prime ministers of Nordic countries at the age of 32. I was 36 at the time. And after 3 months, my boss, C.J. van Jaarsveld, called me to his office and said, okay, Pietersen, you've been doing this for 3 months. What has surprised you? Right? I said, C.J., I came into this job thinking that it was a bit like playing a game of chess. You just put all the right pieces into play. You had the logic all arranged in terms of what you need to do. You explain the logic to everybody, and they will gallop off and take the mountain, right? Pure logic will win. I'd been a lawyer, so now I'm trained in the kind of logical way of thinking. And I said, what has really surprised me is the amount of time I have needed to spend on people issues.
I often said business would be so easy if it wasn't for people.
That's correct. Yes, exactly. And he simply looked at me, he smiled, and he said, Pietersen, welcome to leadership.
Exactly.
And I mean, that was the revelation. I think you need to have the basis of competence. You need to be a lifelong learner for sure, because the world is changing. And if you get left behind, you can't lead. And you have to be good with people. It's the ability to persuade others, to respect them, to preserve their dignity. Sometimes you have to do very tough things. You have to discontinue a business which is failing. And you have to confront the people and say, I'm sorry, but we have to do this. The only thing I can do now is to be fair to the point of being generous in terms of severance payments, and to strive to help you all find your new footing in the ways that I can. That's all that's left for me to be able to do. But if I don't do this, discontinuation of this particular business, the totality will fail. So we do understand I'm doing it in the broader interest. It's not something I'm attacking you for.
Right.
And those are what's that about again? It's about the people, isn't it? Otherwise, you simply say, well, that's an activity.
The people and compassion and empathy all tied into that leadership role.
This is crucial. And the rest of the organization is watching you. And if you deal with it in the wrong way, they all feel injured by that. You know, it's what did Ralph Waldo Emerson say, which I really love, is what you do speaks so loudly that I cannot hear what you say. Right? People judge you by your actions, very much so.
A flip of a question.
Yeah.
What is the best piece of advice in business that you got that you ignored?
Oh, wow.
But you found out you could still be resilient and find your own pathway through it?
I have to think about that because here's the trap.
Okay. And that wasn't a trick question.
No. But it leads me to a thought, and I'm grateful for it. When we ignore advice, we often ignore it because we think the advice was wrong, not because we resent it or simply don't want to do it. We think that's not good advice. So it's not always a simple matter of saying, I don't take advice from people. Mm-hmm. We're always trying to learn, and we learn from feedback. Mm-hmm. If you don't get feedback, you're not going to learn. As a colleague of mine that teaches at the business school often likes to say to the students I'm sitting at the back of the room listening to, he said, the key to success is not experience, it's feedback. Mm-hmm. But you have to be good at giving feedback and receiving feedback. So you have to invite feedback. Mm-hmm. And not all the feedback you get is going to be helpful or accurate. Some of it is distorted. Some of it is based on personal motives. Some of it is based on people who don't like you and your style of doing things. You can't change your authentic self. Mm-hmm. You can only learn to be better by expressing your authentic self as you go along. So the kind of advice, and I'm generalizing it because I can't think of anything specific, that I would tend to think about and then not follow is advice that would lead me to be artificial in some way, to be not who I really am.
Great answer. Great reflection.
Yeah, that's, the way I think about that.
You reminded me of two things. I can't think of the name. Jack Welch wrote a book. I remember the cover was yellow, but I can't remember the title of it. But the second chapter was on the importance of being, if you want to be a leader, candor.
Yeah.
And which he said does not mean being mean, but you have to give people the feedback they need to either improve or decide this isn't for me. And the second thing, what you said reminded me of one of my favorite books. I think I've got 6 copies from the 1970s, was Notes to Myself by Hugh Prather. Mm. And he wrote about criticism. And he said and I'm paraphrased, when we're criticized, we have to accept that we have gotten critical feedback from someone. And that doesn't mean they're right. It's critical thinking we're hearing. Yes. And that critical thinking is something we can then decide if we agree with or if we disagree with. But to get upset about it is ridiculous because you're getting critical thinking from another. Exactly. And if you think of the term critical thinking in a business situation, don't you want everyone to come in being critical thinkers?
Yes.
So if over the years that has morphed to me into business situations, I want to surround myself with critical thinkers. Tell me where you think I'm going off the rail. Where am I going wrong? Where might I stumble? I can listen and then say, okay, this is the time I'm a dictator. I'm going to make my decision anyway, but this is the time it's a republic. Yes. That was a good idea. I'm glad you suggested.
Exactly. As long as you give it due consideration and be careful not to reject a message just because you don't like the messenger.
Exactly. These always go so fast. We've got about a minute or so, a minute and a half. You were about to say something, and I have a feeling it's going to be good. So I want to hear how you'd wrap this up. Because this goes too fast with you, Willie. I'm visioning number 3 right now.
On feedback, I think you put your finger on a crucial thing. Mm-hmm. I say never stop learning. You cannot continue learning without good feedback, right? Mm-hmm. Now, here is the problem. As you grow in seniority in an organization, you reach the stage of what I call the curse of power. Ooh. The curse of power is where you no longer get honest feedback from people because they begin to tell you what they think you would like to hear. You're also very far removed from what's happening at ground level, and you've got a number of layers of people reporting to you. By the time you get it, it's been varnished and it's been distorted. So combating the curse of power becomes crucial.
I think that's a book title.
Yeah. It's a key thing. I ran into this quite a bit, and I remember saying to people in my executive team, I invite feedback. We must give each other honest feedback, and we must practice doing it well. But please do not flatter me, because flattery is manipulation.
Yeah.
And I remember actually saying to somebody, look, that's fine, but I think you're flattering me. Let's just get off that and just say it as it is. That's hard to pull off. And I observe people really, if you like, wallowing in this praise that they get. Again, I'm quoting my colleague who talks about feedback. He said, have you noticed as you become senior that your jokes have suddenly become funnier?
That's sincere laughter because it's a good joke. It's true. It's
joke.
true. All of a sudden, sycophants instead of,
exactly.
Somebody to say, Mr. Pietersen, I think there could be a better way.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, that's a very important thing.
Yeah. Oh, my gosh. I learned so much from you. You are a treasure trove, a wealth of information, of insight, of experience on management, on leadership. You're fantastic. I really do hope we get to do this at least a third time, maybe even a fourth, because I know there's so much more.
Well, we're back to this issue of feedback, and through questions, that's Socratic, and that's the way we learn. So you've asked great questions, and I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Made me think.
Thank you. I'm Dian Griesel. This has been the Silver Disobedience Perception Dynamics podcast. We're recording here in Manhattan Center in TV2. My guest has been Willie Pietersen. He's been in the C-suite. He advises the C-suite. He teaches business management or the management at Columbia University. And he's the author of quite a few books. And he's just a treasure trove of information. There will be all kinds of links to get his books and to stay in touch with him, and I highly recommend you do. Please hit subscribe, and thank you again very much.
Thank you, Diane. Been a pleasure.